Our session is called Small Steps to Monumental Impact. So we're going to be talking about different historical figures and how their leadership skills and qualities and how we can apply that to service. We just chose 3 historical figures that we thought would fit to our presentation, but if you were to use a history lesson in your hometown to do a service learning service project or a lesson, it's up to you to choose what historical figure you would like to use or a historical event. So we just chose 3 that we thought would work for our presentation. So my name is Rachel Shuster, and my co-presenter is Tiffani Alexander, and we are both on the Generation On Youth Advisory Council. So we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and a little bit about Generation On before we get started with today. So my name is Rachel, as I said, and I'm 17. I'm from Dix Hills, New York. I'm a senior in high school, and I got my start in service in about 6th grade when I started a Kids Care Club. Kids Care Club is a youth-led service club. It's actually one of the programs that Generation On offers for kids and teens and even teachers to start. And I started with about 10 friends doing local service projects, and over the past 6 years, my club has really grown and has really made an impact on my local and global community through lots of different service projects. We've done bowling fundraisers, large cleanups, fashion shows, really anything that we decide needs attention in our community. We plan a project around it. Sometimes we bring in speakers from different organizations to really inform us and get us excited about our next project. So Tiffani will tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll get started.
Well, my name is Tiffani Alexander. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I reside in Covington. I started a bug club called Butterflies, Beetles, and Bees Oh My, and I facilitate the bug club through a child abuse prevention group, and I use it to teach kids about life skills and compassion and nurturing. I've also started a leadership team called Mark It Up, which I use to help to basically coordinate and implement service projects throughout the year. And basically it is made up of elementary, middle, and high school students. So let's go on and get into what Generation On is. So Generation On is a nonprofit that focuses on engaging youth in service and basically creating a service generation. We are the youth enterprise of Points of Light, and we are funded and sponsored by Hasbro. So there are many parts and components to Generation On. Right now, I'm just going to talk about the Youth Advisory Council, and in a second, Rachel's going to talk about a few others. So as we said before, we are Youth Advisory Council, or YAC members, and basically what that means is that we are ambassadors for Generation On in our communities. So we do service projects throughout the year on key moments like MLK Day or 9/11. We also help plan initiatives for the organization, as well as grade grants and review grants for our awards, such as the Hasbro Community Action Hero.
So one of the great things about Generation On that I have found through all my service work and through my Kids Care Club, I've really found the Generation On website to be an awesome resource. With all of its tools and resources, you can find toolkits for planning service projects. If you're a teacher or if you know of a teacher, there's great curriculum available to you for service learning projects and lessons right on the website. You can figure out your next service endeavor by looking at past service stories by service leaders, kids and teens, and maybe classrooms that have done projects. So basically everything is on the website. As I spoke about the club, I started a Kids Care Club. You can find out and read about how to start your own Kids Care Club or Generation On Club, which is for more the middle and high school aged kids. And that all, as I said, and Generation On is behind you if you start one of those clubs 100%, from grant opportunities, as I said, toolkits and tons of resources, monthly newsletters, and just really great support. So today, as I said, we're going to be talking about and engaging in conversation about 3 historical figures, 3 presidents, or 2 presidents and 3 historical figures. So our first historical figure that we're going to talk about today is Abraham Lincoln. So as we know, or I hope we all know, that Abraham Lincoln was president during the edge of the Civil War and when there was a lot of upheaval and chaos in the country, and he definitely once said that a house divided cannot stand. And that just goes to show us that his mission as a president and as a leader of our country was really to maintain unity within our country. And he definitely went through a lot of struggles when doing that, and it really took a lot from his presidency and for our country to really maintain unity. Can anyone tell me what you think a unified group looks like? It doesn't have to be what it looked like when we were doing the activity, or just maybe in general what you think, or something that you've noticed with working in service or just in general in life of what you think a unified group would look like.
So a group that's working together for a common goal.
And maybe physically, what do you think would look like? Or what other people would see if they were observing a unified group? Yeah, and basically everyone has maybe clear expectations or a common goal, and you can physically see that. And you can definitely notice a ununified group versus a unified group, as if someone were to walk by while we're doing the activity, they can definitely see the difference when we were walking into each other, or rather we were all going together towards the double doors. I'm sure since we're all in the service world and we're all involved in different community service activities or service learning, we've had firsthand experience with unity. Leading a group of my peers, and I've been an executive board, there's definitely been times when things have overlapped and not everyone had the same goal, so it was definitely hard to work as a group. Like from now on, if we know that sometimes it happens that groups are not united, how can we move forward and ensure that throughout an entire project or throughout an entire lesson that everyone is together, everyone has that same common goal? Does anyone have any suggestions or something that maybe worked for you in the past? Yeah? That's definitely a big part of it, I think. And from my experience, I also, with my kids care club, I always make sure that everything's laid out exactly what the expectations are, so everyone knows what their role is, whether it be they're working on a committee for an event, that everyone has their clear assigned roles. Is definitely a big part of how I make sure that through an entire process of planning an event that really works out. So unity is also tied to compromise. I think you mentioned about like people didn't have the same ideas and how that was really hard to come together and put a project together. And that is where compromise comes in. And compromise is definitely a form of getting over the barrier of disunity. And Tiffani is going to talk about how compromise plays into our history as a country and how we can use that for service.
Thank you, Rachel. So now we're going to jump into our second leader, which is Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State. He was also a president, and he was very, very instrumental in writing the rough draft for our Declaration of Independence. However, what many people do not realize is that the rough draft that he did write was not the one that was accepted and used and signed. See, Thomas Jefferson, the rough draft that he wrote, had many passages on freedom. However, his beliefs on freedom somewhat differed from many southern states. People thought that the southern states would disagree and it would anger them. So they altered and changed the passages about freedom. While Thomas Jefferson did not agree with these changes, he understood that for the good of the Republic and that way that the country would be able to still have a Declaration of Independence, he would just agree with the changes and move on. What I want you to do is, as a group, so as a table, discuss what you wrote about how you could restore the education system, and then I would like for you to, as a group, come up with a one-sentence mission statement about how your group could restore the education system. And I know it does seem like this, even though we're talking about service and we kind of just jump to education, we wanted to talk about this topic because it's so controversial and it can be so different depending on where you're from. So with that being said, we're going to go on and go to our next leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King was a civil rights activist, and he started out doing small protests in cities like Atlanta, Georgia, or Birmingham, Alabama. These protests were like sit-ins or just small marches. However, these small protests eventually led up to the March on Washington, which had thousands of people. This just goes to show that small steps can really lead to monumental impacts. And that even though it seems like it may have taken a very long time or that it was really hard work, it really does pay off in the end. Small steps of just trying and starting off by yourself can eventually end up with you having a lot of support and a very large system behind you, and basically making a big impact in the service world. Small steps to monumental impacts. And you guys really answer that question very well in the sense of these small changes and, like you guys said, small projects can basically end up making a huge impact in your communities and in society as a whole.